Yo, what is up, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video, and today, in honor of the NBA season being right around the corner, I am dropping my official 2023 NBA season predictions. I'm talking every single team 1 through 15 in each conference. We're going to talk about awards, the playoffs, all NBA teams, everything in between for this upcoming season. Most of this stuff is probably going to be very, very wrong, as it has been in the past, but who knows? Maybe this is my year. It's taken me a bit longer to make this video than I wanted to because this is probably the hardest season I feel like there's ever been to predict. So many teams are close, the league is more talented than ever, picking the all NBA teams was impossible, and also there's been a guy blowing leaves outside my house for about 30 minutes, so I'm just gonna pray that you can't hear him. But without further ado, let's cover the 2023 season. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe, as well as comment down below and let me know how wrong I was about your favorite team or your favorite player. We're gonna start off with standings in the Eastern Conference. Real quick before we get into the standings, I'm gonna ask you guys to please show some mercy on me. It is impossible to predict this season, especially these standings. This Eastern Conference is completely stacked. I might have your favorite team lower than they're supposed to be in your mind, but I'm going to try and explain everything. Let's go ahead and start at the number one spot. At the number one spot in the Eastern Conference, I have the Philadelphia 76ers. I think they've gotten incredibly deep over this offseason, adding PJ Tucker, Danuel House, and De'Anthony Melton. They had one of my favorite off seasons in the league. I think James Harden has a bounce back year. I think Tyrese Maxey has all-star potential as soon as this upcoming season. Tobias Harris is really solid, and of course you've got an MVP caliber player in Joel Embiid. I think the Sixers are going to come out and be the best team in the regular season in the Eastern Conference. At the 2 spot, we have the Milwaukee Bucks. Jrue Holiday, Chris Middleton, Giannis Antetokounmpo. There's not much more to say than that. They've got some really solid supporting pieces too. I think they come back this season with a vengeance, looking to show everyone that, hey, if we were healthy last year, we could have won the title. And of course, having the best player in the world in Giannis Antetokounmpo goes a long way. At the 3 spot, I have my first big surprise, and that is the Cleveland Cavaliers. I'm a huge believer in this Donovan Mitchell move for them. I love the backcourt of Garland and Donovan Mitchell, giving you 2 all-star caliber players, as well as a third one in Jarrett Allen in the front court. And Evan Mobley, I think, could make an all-defensive leap this season and even be in Defensive Player of the Year talks. They've got some decent role players too. I think the Cavs are going to shock a lot of people. They're a young team that's hungry. I think they make a Grizzlies type jump and jump way up in the Eastern Conference standings and get that 3 seed. At the 4th spot, I have the Boston Celtics. You might be shocked that I have them this low, but really it's not a result of the team that they are, it's what's happened to them this offseason. The whole situation with Ime Udoka has kind of thrown a cloud over the organization, and it's going to take some time for a new head coach and the players around him to get acclimated to the system. I think it's going to be a little bit of growing pains in the beginning, as well as the fact that Robert Williams is going to miss a good portion of the beginning of the season due to a surgery. He was so critical to their success last season, and I think without having him at the beginning of the year, they're going to start off kind of slow like they did last year, and ultimately by the end of the year, they'll rise way back up into the ranks of contention in the Eastern Conference. Regardless of what seed they enter the playoffs in, the Celtics are going to be one of the hardest teams to beat out east. At the 5th spot, I have the Brooklyn Nets. I think Ben Simmons could take a bit of time to get acclimated to their systems and everything. Kevin Durant has dealt with some injuries the past few years, so he may miss some games too. You never know with Kyrie Irving. Plus, they've got a lot of role players that kind of have to find their new fit on the team. I just think it might take some time. They could really either rise to the occasion to be a top 3 seed or fall all the way to a play-in team. They're an X factor out east. I'm going to settle in the middle and say they get that 5th spot. At the 6th spot, I have the Miami Heat, which honestly feels a bit disrespectful on my part. They've got Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, Eric Spoelstra. They're probably going to end up being a top 3-4 seed in the conference, but I just hated their offseason. They don't have a starting power forward on the roster. They lost PJ Tucker to a competitor out east in the Sixers. Kyle Lowry wasn't what he was supposed to be last season. What kind of Bam Adebayo are we going to see? Is he going to be aggressive like he needs to be for this team to reach their fullest potential? What do we get from guys like Victor Oladipo or Duncan Robinson? There's just a lot of question marks around this roster. I think if they went out and made some acquisitions, they could rise up pretty quickly, but right now I think they kind of just lost a step out east. At the 7th spot as our first play-in team, I have the Toronto Raptors. They once again are still very, very good. The East is just incredibly deep. I like what they did in the offseason, bringing in Otto Porter. I think Scotty Barnes, the jump that he takes is going to be a big determining factor in their success out east. If he rises up and becomes an all-star caliber player, then this Raptors team could easily be a top 4 team in the conference. But if he doesn't take that massive leap, I could see them falling behind a little bit. They still aren't the deepest team in the league. They're going to need some pretty big production from some of those lower level guys to get to where they want to go. And once again, I just think it's such a talented conference that they're going to fall a little bit behind some of these other teams. Then at the 8th spot, I have the Atlanta Hawks. I'm not super sold on the fit with Trae Young and DeJounte Murray. I still think that's going to take a lot of time to gel if it works out in the way that they intend it to. John Collins has dealt with some injuries. Clint Capella wasn't great last year. I'm just not super sold on this team at the moment. I think they've got a really high ceiling if everything clicks, but for right now, I think it's going to take some time if it does work out at all, and I'm going to still have them being one of the play-in teams. At the 9th spot, I have the Chicago Bulls, who were really good last season when they were healthy, but the problem is they're really never healthy. Lonzo Ball is going to miss at least the start of the season, if not a good portion of it, and he's one of their most important players as their floor general, a defender, overall a connector for the whole team. He just elevates everyone around him, and not having him is going to be a huge blow to the Bulls to start the season. They'll probably have a pretty slow start, and ultimately, if you lose kind of a good portion of those first few games, with how tough the East is, you're just going to continue to fall. I also don't know if DeMar DeRozan can replicate quite what he did last season. I still think he'll be really good, but I don't know if he's going to average close to 30 points per game again, so I have the Bulls taking a drop. And finally, at the 10th spot, we have the New York Knicks. They brought in Jalen Brunson this past offseason. I think Julius Randle can have a bit of a bounce back year. Maybe RJ Barrett could have a breakout season. It's all going to come down to the young guys, though. Guys like, as I mentioned, RJ Barrett, Mitchell Robinson, how does Obi Toppin play, Quentin Grimes, Emmanuel Quickley. Those young guys are really going to determine if they make the play-in over some of those other teams. I'm going to say that they play well enough to make it, and ultimately, even though the Knicks probably have higher aspirations, they don't miss the play-in again for a second straight year. Then at 11, we have the Washington Wizards. I think Beal can have a bounce back year, but I'm not quite sure if that'll be enough to carry them to the play-in. I worry about their depth. The young guys are kind of a bit of a mystery. Will Kristaps even be healthy? It remains to be seen. At 12, we have the Orlando Magic. I think their young talent is really going to help them kind of rise up this season from where they were the past few years. I still don't know if it's enough to make the play-in quite yet, but they're going to be well on their way. Then we have the Detroit Pistons at 13. They have Cade Cunningham, of course. They brought in Bojan Bogdanovic. They've got some young guys around them, but I still think they're a pretty young team. It's going to take some more time before they make that playoff push. Then we have the Pacers at 14. They've got Halliburton, Turner, Hield, Oshae Brissett, Chris Duarte. They've got some really solid players on the roster, Benedict Mathurin as well, but I think some of those guys, mainly Hield and Turner, will get moved at some point during the season, which will ultimately lose them a lot more games. Then finally at 15, we have the Charlotte Hornets. They've got LaMelo Ball, but really no one outside of him. They've got Gordon Hayward and Rozier, who are fine, but overall the depth is really lacking. They don't have much of a defense, no rim protector, no real lob threats for LaMelo Ball. I like Mark Williams as a draft pick, but he's not going to do enough at the center position at a young age. I think the Hornets are in for a massive step back, and I made a whole video talking about why they're going to struggle this year that I just dropped prior to this one. Go check that out if you want to hear more. Now we're moving over to the Western Conference. I don't know if there's ever been a time in the league where there was more parity, at least in the time that I've been watching it, because this might have been harder to predict than the East somehow, despite that taking me like 10 days. But we're going to go ahead and get into it, starting off with the number one team, the Denver Nuggets. I made a whole video talking about why I'm really into this Denver Nuggets roster. They've got the MVP of the past 2 years in Nikola Jokic, maybe looking for a three-peat. He's got his 2 and 3 options back now too, with Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. I like their offseason moves, bringing in guys like KCP and Bruce Brown, who can both defend and hit some shots when they need them to. I think Bones Highland can take a step up. Really, the only weakness on their roster to me is the backup center spot, which is currently DeAndre Jordan, but if they address that, they'll really have like no holes in this roster. I think they go out and snag the 1 seed. At the 2 spot, another big surprise, the Minnesota Timberwolves. I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. I'm a big believer in the Gobert pairing with Cat. I think it's going to work out. I think Edwards is in for a pretty solid jump in his 3rd season. D'Lo was underrated in the regular season last year, as much as he did struggle in the playoffs. I like Jaden McDaniels. I love Kyle Anderson as a pickup too. Naz Reid is a solid backup big. Jalen Noel. They've just got a really solid roster to me. I think specifically in the regular season, they're going to have a ton of success and make a huge run all the way up to the 2 seed. At the 3 spot, we have the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, I do think Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are going to rest some games, but this roster is just so deep. I think they still make a 3 seed anyways. To me, they're the best roster in the league on paper. When healthy, they're going to dominate a lot of teams on any given night. It might take some time for Kawhi to work back to what he was prior to his injury, but it's Kawhi Leonard. He's basically a robot. I don't think it takes long at all. Led by Tyronn arguably one of the best coaches in the league, they're going to be a top 3 team. At the 4 spot, we have the Golden State Warriors, the defending champions, and they still are of championship caliber. I just think it's going to take a bit of time to adjust to new roles for some of the guys. No more Gary Payton II or Otto Porter. Now you're going to have a young guy like Jonathan Kuminga getting some more run. You have to integrate James Wiseman into the fold of things. I just think it'll be a bit hit or miss at the beginning. By the end of the year, they're going to be the same Golden State Warriors, but they also don't care that much about the regular season, it feels like. They've been there, done this a million times before. Regardless of what seed they get, they're going to be incredibly dangerous when heading into the postseason. At the 5th spot, I have the Phoenix Suns. Falling from the 1 seed, I just don't like the energy around the team right now. It feels very negative. It feels like everyone's at odds with each other. All of the stuff that DeAndre Ayton said in Media Day where he and Monty Williams haven't talked to each other. It's clear he's not happy to be in Phoenix. You know, they lost to the 36ers, an Australian team too. As I'm saying that, as the Thunder play them tonight, so hopefully they don't lose. If they do, come back and laugh at this portion of the video, but stuff just kind of feels off with them. I think they're going to go ahead and take a step back. They didn't do anything in the offseason to really address their big holes, which is bench scoring particularly. Now that they're also going to lose Jay Crowder, who's not in the team anymore, Cam Johnson moves into that starting lineup. The bench just is super weak, and I don't know if I trust them as much as I did last year. At 6, we have the Dallas Mavericks, who I thought had a decent offseason, bringing in Christian Wood and JaVale McGee. I think they'll be pretty solid. I just worry about the Jalen Brunson loss. I think losing him is going to hurt them a lot more than people think, and Luka can do a lot, but he can't carry you to a top 4 or 5 seed in this stacked of a Western Conference without a sidekick. You've got Spencer Dinwiddie, who I think could be decent in that backcourt with him, but I feel like Jalen Brunson and him were just such a good fit. I worry about their depth too. I think they just kind of got outpaced in terms of acquisitions, and, you know, other teams are on the rise a bit more than Dallas is at the moment. At 7, we have the New Orleans Pelicans. I think they could also take a huge leap, but I'm going to be a little bit more conservative with this pick just because of how stacked the conference is. Zion Williamson, in my eyes, will probably be an all-NBA caliber player. You've got Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum, Jonas Valanciunas, Herb Jones. It's a deep team too, with guys off the bench like a Dyson Daniels, for example. Jackson Hayes was really solid in minutes last season too. Trey Murphy III is a really solid 3-and-D player. They've just got a lot of guys that I really, really like, but once again, it's adding a player like Zion into a new system where it might take some time to gel, and the West is just really good. Ultimately, I wouldn't be surprised if they were a top 5-6 team in the West, but I'm going to kind of chill back a little bit and say they get the 7th spot. At the 8th spot, which might shock a lot of you, I have the Memphis Grizzlies taking a massive tumble from their 2nd-seeded finish last season. And you might be asking why, and really it's because I think they overperformed a bit last season. They won a ton of games without John Morant, which if he misses some time, I don't know how replicable that will be. They're also missing Jaren Jackson Jr. for a very good portion of the beginning of the season, and even when he comes back, it's going to take him some time to kind of work back to the player he was. He really was their defensive anchor last season, becoming an all-defensive caliber guy, and I worry about that defense a lot without him. I didn't like that they lost Anthony Melton and Kyle Anderson. They're going to be asking for a lot from some young guys, and I still think the Grizzlies, when it comes playoff time, will be really hard to beat, but because of missing Jaren Jackson Jr., I think they have a slow start to the year where it's just kind of hard to catch up in the West if you lose a good portion of the beginning of your games because of how stacked it is. This isn't a talent thing. I think they're one of the most talented young teams in the league, but I just worry about the beginning portion of the season, and I think ultimately that's going to cause them to fall into the play-in. At the 9th spot, I have the Los Angeles Lakers. I still don't see them as much of a playoff team. I still think they're going to ultimately miss it, but LeBron James, Anthony Davis, it's hard to bet against them at least making the play-in. They're not a very deep roster. Their bench is really, really rough. They still need to make a couple moves in my eyes to get back to competing the way they want to, but for right now, I think they do make the play-in. And finally, in the last play-in spot at 10, we have the Portland Trailblazers. They've got Damian Lillard, Anthony Simons, Yusuf Nurkic, Jeremy Grant, Josh Hart, Nasir Little. It's a really decent squad. Gary Payton II too, I like him as their pickup, but ultimately there's just a lot of talented teams out west. It's going to take some time for all these new guys to gel together, and I think they end up being a play-in team. Then we've got the non-play-in teams. At 11 are the Sacramento Kings. As much as I want to put them in the playoffs, I just don't think it's their year. I think they're still a year away. I like Keegan Murray a lot. I like the Fox and Sabonis pairing, but I just don't think they're good enough to compete quite yet. Then at 12, we have the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think SGA is enough to get us past some of those other rebuilding teams. I think the defense is going to be really solid even without Chet Holmgren, and I think we surprise some people and make not a play-in push, but kind of get close in terms of standings. Then at 13, I have the Houston Rockets. I think Jalen Green takes a jump, Jabari Smith is a solid defender, and all around they're going to be a decent team this year. At 14, I have the Utah Jazz. They've got a lot of decent veterans still, but I think most of them get moved way before the trade deadline. And finally, at 15, we have the San Antonio Spurs, who I think are going to be really, really bad and probably get Victor Wembanyama. Now let's talk about my award predictions for this upcoming season, starting off with Rookie of the Year. For the longest time, it was Chet Holmgren before he suffered that season-ending injury. So now I'm going to go with Paolo. It's boring. He was the number 1 overall pick, but to me, he's the clear favorite. He's going to immediately come in as the number 1 scoring option on that Magic team, put up some really high-level numbers, and like I said in my standings, I think the Magic could be pretty solid this upcoming season, especially compared to the past 2 years. I think that'll kind of get Paolo's name out there as well, so I see him taking home Rookie of the Year. At 6th Man of the Year, I'm going to go with Jordan Poole of the Golden State Warriors. Him and Tyler Hero are probably going to be the 2 guys battling it out, but because Hero just won it, I'm going to go with Jordan Poole, be a bit different here. I think he's really solid and really makes a case to receive a similar extension to what Hero got in this upcoming offseason. For Coach of the Year, I have Chris Finch of the Minnesota Timberwolves. As I said in the standings portion, I think the Timberwolves are going to be really good, and therefore I think he gets a lot of buzz for Coach of the Year. I think he's kind of flown under the radar as a really solid coach these past couple seasons, and this year I think he gets his flowers. Then for Executive of the Year, I have Kobe Altman of the Cleveland Cavaliers. He traded for Donovan Mitchell. There's not much more to say. For Most Improved Player, I've got Jalen Brunson of the Knicks. Being in Madison Square Garden, there's going to be a really big spotlight on him. He averaged around 16 points per game. I think he could get that up to the low 20s, which already would give him enough of a conversation. I also think he's going to help elevate his teammates a lot, be a good playmaker. Brunson, in my opinion, is in the perfect spotlight and position to win the award, and I think he goes out and does it. For Defensive Player of the Year, we have another player who swapped teams in Rudy Gobert. I think he's also going to be in a big spotlight on the Minnesota Timberwolves, and I think he's going to really perform, transform that defense, and show that he's basically a one-man wrecking crew on that end of the court. He's going to win Defensive Player of the Year and once again establish himself as one of the best rim protectors of all time. And finally for MVP, I've got Joel Embiid. I think this is the year that he finally takes it home. Jokic has barely beat him out the past 2 seasons, but with Jokic having won twice in a row, I think voters fatigue is really going to kick in. I think Embiid is going to have a phenomenal season as the Sixers get the 1 seed, and he will be the player to take home the Most Valuable Player award, finally in his eyes. For All-NBA First Team, I have Steph Curry, Luka Doncic, Kevin Durant, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Joel Embiid. For All-NBA Second Team, I have Trae Young, John Morant, Zion, Jason Tatum, and Nikola Jokic. And for All-NBA Third Team, I have Devin Booker, James Harden, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Rudy Gobert. I know there were some big snubs there in the All-NBA teams, but once again, it's just an incredibly talented league, and those are the guys that I settled on. For All Defensive First Team, I have Drew Holiday, Marcus Smart, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Evan Mobley, who I think takes a big leap, and Rudy Gobert. And for All Defensive Second Team, I have Herb Jones, Mikal Bridges, Draymond Green, Ben Simmons, and Bam Adebayo. For All Rookie First Team, I have Jaden Ivey, Benedict Mathurin, Paolo Banchero, Keegan Murray, and Jabari Smith Jr. While for All Rookie Second Team, I have Jalen Williams, Jaden Hardy, Ochai Agbaji, Dyson Daniels, and Jalen Duren. Finally, we've got the playoffs. In the Eastern Conference Finals, I have the Sixers and the Bucks matching up. I think this would be an incredible series. You've got Joel Embiid versus Giannis Antetokounmpo, Drew Holiday versus James Harden and Tyrese Maxey at the guard positions, Chris Middleton and Tobias Harris, 2 really deep teams, 2 teams that are looking to prove something in my eyes, and ultimately, I think the Philadelphia Sixers get it done, making their first NBA Finals in 21 years. Joel Embiid taking home Conference Finals MVP as they take down the Bucks in 7 games. And then out west, I have the Los Angeles Clippers versus the Denver Nuggets. The Clippers with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George make it to their 2nd Conference Finals in the past 3 years, while the Denver Nuggets make it for the first time since 2020. 2 teams that have been looking for a Finals appearance for such a long time. Jokic is the MVP of the past 2 seasons, going up against Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, but ultimately, I think the Clippers do come out on top in this series, taking it in 6 games with Kawhi Leonard winning Conference Finals MVP. Finally, we have the Sixers versus the Clippers in the NBA Finals, and I'm going to take the Los Angeles Clippers to win it all in 7 games with Kawhi Leonard taking home Finals MVP in what is a battle in a 7-game series. I think this would be such an incredible Finals. It's one that I would love to see, one of my dream matchups, and in my predictions, that's what I'm going to go with. And so those are my 2023 NBA predictions. This video was probably really long. I spent longer on it than I honestly meant to, but I was super excited about making these predictions. It is one of the toughest seasons seasons in history to predict in my eyes. The league has never been more talented, and there is such parity all across both conferences. I can't wait to see what happens. Let me know in the comment section below what I got right and what I got wrong. And also, go ahead and comment down below some of your predictions. I'd love to hear what you all have to say. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy. Hit that notification bell too to make sure you don't miss any uploads. I'll see y'all later. Real One, say it back.